We're slowly building our arrangement, and now we would like to go the next step. We could have, at this point in time, the soloists, after they play, step aside and let the drummer take a whole chorus of solo or a half a chorus solo. Or there's even times when we have the soloists trade 4s or 8s with the drums, very commonly done. But at this point, I'd like to talk about a shout chorus. So if you look at download PDF number 5, shout chorus / drum solo, we'll talk about the shout chorus. Typically a shout chorus is done after soloists. Sometimes it replaces the melody on the way out. Sometimes it does not. It works with the melody. A great writer of shout choruses is Sammy Nestico, who wrote so many charts for the Count Basie Band, is master of writing shout choruses. Shout chorus tends to still emphasize the melody. So in this case, if you look at the shout chorus I've written here, at letter A, I'm outlining the B flat major chord, but I'm also keeping in mind the intervals of the melody. The melody of the tune starts on A, and then in the 3rd bar, the melody drops down from a G, a tritone, to the D flat. And I've kept that intact in this shout chorus. The same thing happens again in measures 6 and 7, where the melody goes from a G to an F, and then drops the tritone to, in this case, a C flat, or, and harmonically, a B natural. Notice the harmony in measure 3 and measure 4. I've taken the liberty of adding a little bit more interesting color to the chord, so the B flat minor 7 now has a major 7th on top of it. What this does, it gives me the notes D flat, the 7th, or the 3rd, F, the 5th, and A, the major 7th. When those notes are held over against the E flat chord, they become common tones, and now they are D flat, the 7th, F, the 9, and A, the sharp 11. Very colorful tones. The reason I did that is the A sounds, again, after you've heard it as the downbeat of bar 1 and the downbeat of bar 2, you're hearing it again in bar 3 and bar 4, and it has a very nice color to it. Notice that letter B, once again, I'm outlining the melody, but this time I've introduced a little variation on the melodic line at letter A. So I could easily have had the group play the same line at letter B as they played at A, and it would work because the chords are the same, everything is the same. But for the sake of variety and interest, I put a bit of a variation on the melodic line, and you'll notice that in measure 18, it's different. Measure 19, it still keeps intact that drop down to the D flat, but then in measure 20, instead of going up to the A, we now go a 3rd higher up to the C. And this formula stays intact in measures 21 through 24. The same thing occurs. What this does is gives us a nice, interesting line. The melody is still present underneath there, and it gives the drummer an opportunity to exchange with the ensemble. So let's hear number 5, the shout chorus with drum solo. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And of course, the last chord was included because that would be the pickup to go back to the melody. Slowly, our arrangement is coming together. So now we have a nice permutation of the melody. We've got some harmony of the melody. We've got background figures that we can put behind the soloists. We have a shout chorus to play after the solos, which then sets up the drummer very nicely. Two things we need to take care of, and the first of those two things is the introduction. So if you look at PDF download number 6, titled Introduction, Sammy Nestico talks about this in his book, The Professional Arranger. The introduction basically sets the table for what is about to occur in the arrangement. In the introduction, you want to suggest parts of the melody, if possible, but not necessarily give everything away. There's a variety of introductions that could be done. You could do a vamp, or we could start with a basic drum beat and have him play 4 or 8 bars and have the ensemble come in. In this case, I chose to use the last 8 measures of the form of the song. So if you start from the last measure and you count backwards 8, I use a pickup into that. And once again, the melodic line is based upon the melody of the tune. So if you notice, the first note in bar 1 is the F, the last note is the E, and those are the notes that correspond with the melody on the basic lead sheet. In the third bar, I took the liberty of changing a couple of notes, although it still ends on the note F, which is the note that the lead sheet ends on in measure 4 or measure 3 as well. Measure 2 and measure 4, I've decided to put in a short drum fill, which also kind of sets up the idea that we'll be trading with the drums later on after all the horns and everybody else has soloed. As well, there is a drum fill in measure 7 and measure 8, setting up the first chord of the song, the pickup note that would lead into the song. In measure 5 and measure 6, what we have is basically a type of cliche blues line, something to just give us a nice introduction with a short ending and the and of 4 in measure 6, allowing the drums then to have that fill in measure 7, 8. Let's listen to the introduction to Just Friends. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So now you can see the melody has been established, the sound of and style and the feel of the chart has been established, and yet it hasn't all been given away yet. The final element we need is to put an ending on this. When we played the basic lead sheet at the beginning, the group ended on the whole note, and it was very unsatisfying because the whole train just comes to a halt and there seems to be no really conclusion happening. So we're going to make an ending, and this is called a tag ending. So I take a phrase, usually 2 bars, sometimes it can be 4 bars, and you play it over again. In this case, I've opted to move it by an interval upwards. So if you look at the coda in measure 29, that's the original melody there, measure 29 and measure 30. Measure 31 or 30, and 32, I've taken this same material. In 31, I've moved that note up 1 whole step. So 29, we have a D dropping an octave to a D. Measure 31, now it's an E dropping an octave to an E. Measure 32, rather than do the same thing, I thought it would be interesting to move chromatically from an E to an E flat. And also, since I dropped the octave twice, going up the octave proves to be more interesting and satisfying. The E flat at the end of measure 32 then leads me nicely to the D natural in measure 33. And the line that I used in the end of the introduction, I'm also using at the end of the coda in measure 34. A little drum fill at the end also mimics what we had in the introduction, thereby giving a sense of cohesiveness to the whole arrangement. And instead of ending the notes on a downbeat, taking advantage of that syncopation and anticipation so that the last 2 chords in measure 36 are on the upbeat of 1 and the upbeat of 2. The upbeat of 2 is an anticipation towards beat 3. So let's hear the last fragment of the melody, and then the coda, which starts at measure 29. Here we go, the coda ending to Just Friends. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.